Welcome to Salute Your Sports. Another exciting week. Common Enchev, Drew Brackett, Tom Castleman. Guys, an exciting time of the year. We've got the NBA regular season winding down, a baseball legend released by his team, and we might even talk Tim Tebow. I know Castleman is pretty excited about that prospect.
Yeah, what year is it? This is bringing back legit memories of college days, so definitely going to be a fun show to get into.
Well, speaking of those college days, today is the 8-year anniversary of the last Salute Your Sports show with the three of us. And of
Wow.
course, it was Tom who famously got in the last word. We didn't even know it we might have known it at the time. Common wouldn't admit it, but if you listen to the archive, it's Mr. Castleman with the last words on that show as we were fighting for it for hours, probably.
I could not believe that it is the 8-year anniversary. I didn't realize that. Has it really been that long? I guess time flies when you're having fun. But certainly, we just reunited the show a few months back, so I'm excited to have the show 7.5, 8 years later, back in its way with the gentleman. Very good facts there, Drew Brackett. Nicely done.
Yes, no fact errors over here, but we'll get into that later, of course, when Common ends up with some. But we'll start with the association, and it's almost playoff time, guys, believe it or not. And the 76ers looks like they've won 8 in a row. How about that? But we'll start with the Western Conference. Who will end up in the play-in games as a 7th seed? Is it going to be the Lakers, the Blazers, the Mavs? There's so much star power in those potential games. And right now, as it stands, the Lakers are in the 7th seed, Common.
Yeah, it's definitely not going to be the Mavericks. I'll tell you that much. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're currently the 5 seed, and they have a 2-game lead on the Lakers, a half-game lead on the Blazers, and they also have got the easiest schedule of the three teams. They play the Grizzlies, Pelicans, Raptors, T Wolves, and they also have the tiebreaker over both teams. So it's certainly not going to be Luka Doncic and the Blazers. As far as whether it's going to be the Lakers or Blazers, man, it's going to be close. I know right now the Blazers have a 1.5 game lead. I know they have the tiebreaker also, but guess what? The Blazers play the Jazz, the Suns, and the Nuggets. Three very good teams, and the Jazz and Suns are battling out for that 1 seed in the West. Meanwhile, the Lakers certainly have a tough game tonight against the Knicks, but otherwise, their schedule is pretty easy. Rockets, Pelicans, Pacers, all teams under 500, all teams they should beat. I know LeBron, they're saying he's going to be out tonight, but they think he'll be back Wednesday. I think the Lakers beat the Knicks tonight. I think they go 4-0 in the last 4 games. They're coming off a huge win against the Suns. They're hot. And it's really going to go down to the Blazers. They have to go just 1-2 in their last 3 to win the tiebreaker. I think they're going to lose to Phoenix. I think they'll beat Denver at home the last game of the season. It really goes down to that Utah game next time out for the Blazers. It could go either way. I'm going to stick with the Lakers just because Castleman's a Blazers fan and he's going to tell me the Blazers are going to get the 6th seed. I say Blazers go 1-2, Lakers go 4-0, get that 6th seed and avoid that playing game.
I actually think the Blazers are the most likely team to fall into that 7th seed. They won last night, which really helped their cause. As I was
Against the Rockets.
well, yeah, but it still helped the cause. But Common, you mentioned it, having the toughest schedule of these teams heading down the stretch, they're going to have to earn their way in. And something that is been a theme all year long for the Portland Trail Blazers is they make it exciting. But in part, that's kind of out of necessity. They don't have a great defensive team, so they are capable of putting up a lot of points. They're also capable of giving up a lot of points, and that's not really reliable heading into the playoffs. So I see them probably as the most likely team to fall into that 7th seed. I think the game against the Knicks tonight for the Lakers is going to be probably the most pivotal one. Can they sneak in a win without LeBron James? If they can do that, they've got a great shot at the 6th seed. If not, if they fall to 2 games back with just 3 games to play, that's going to be some tougher wood to cut right there.
On paper, you guys are correct. However, this time around, the games are not played on paper, so you are wrong. Because the Blazers have they quote unquote have a harder schedule. Well, why would the Jazz play their starters in that last game? Why are these good teams going to play their starters? Everybody wants the Lakers in that play-in game. The Lakers are the defending champs. So all these teams are in the playoffs. Why would they play their starters? And the Lakers are going to go against the bottom. Well, those guys just want to beat the Lakers, so the Lakers have to play in the play-in game.
You are right, Drew, but let me correct
I see the Trailblazers having the 6th seed, Lakers going to the playing game.
Yeah, I mean, it totally could go 50-50. For the record, the reason why they are going to play their starters is because they want to avoid having to play the Lakers in the 7 game, because Utah actually plays Portland next time out. Their last game is actually against Denver, and Utah currently has a 1.5 game lead on the Suns in the Western Conference for the 1 seed. However, the Suns have the tiebreaker on Utah. So should the Suns and Utah end up with the same record, then the tiebreaker would go to the Suns. And clearly the Suns would like to get the 1 seed so they avoid playing the Lakers, who they just lost to, by the way, without LeBron James in that game. So I think Utah and Phoenix are motivated. They'd much rather get the 1 seed and avoid any chance of the Lakers. Also avoid the Blazers, who is a good team. So that's the reason why those teams are going to play. As far as those other teams wanting to beat the Lakers, yeah, I'm with you there. And I do think it's 50-50. I would say I'm about 50.1% sure it's the Lakers, 49.9% sure it's the Blazers. So it's
the Lakers aren't going 4-0 on the last 4 games. No, not a chance.
They're going at worst 3-1, likely 4-0. Their schedule is very easy, and I think Anthony Davis scoring 42 points last time out against the Suns really inspired them. I mean, the Lakers are not going to lose to the Rockets. The Lakers are not going to lose to the Pacers. The only game that they could lose is possibly tonight against the Knicks. I think they win tonight against the Knicks, which I might have more on that in locks of the week. Then they'll go 4-0. So I do think the Lakers are going 4-0. The biggest issue is if Portland happens to go 2-1. The last game of the season is against Denver. At that point, Denver probably has their seed in place, so Denver might rest someone. But I do think the Jazz and Suns are not going to rest guys. The only problem is for the Jazz is the Jazz do have some injuries. Right now, they have a couple injuries. I know Donovan Mitchell's out. Mike Conley was out last night against the Warriors in that loss. So the Blazers could potentially get by the Jazz because of the Jazz injuries. So to me, it goes down to that Jazz game, and it goes down to the Knicks game for the Lakers, because I don't think the Blazers are going to beat the Suns, their second game for sure.
I also like how the NBA is starting the games on, I think, Saturday and Sunday, or maybe just Sunday, all around the same time. So it's kind of like doing a soccer group stage deal where you start the games at the same time so nobody can sandbag. So I kind of like that. That's what they're doing on Sunday. Well, assuming the Lakers get the 7th seed, can they make a deep run? Maybe win the Western Conference or get to the NBA Finals, Common?
I definitely think so, because, we just saw it. They just beat the Suns, who are the 2 seed, who they're going to play. I know it's only a 1-game sample, but, Anthony Davis has played really well the last few games. And the fact that he scored 42 points against, one of the top 5 defenses in the league in the Suns, also a team that has the 3rd best record in the league, Anthony Davis kind of showed the NBA he's back. Reports also saying LeBron James is feeling better. He's going to take another night off this week because of precautionary reasons, most likely, is what I'm seeing so far. But LeBron is going to come back. And the Lakers, quite frankly, they don't need home court. This is a veteran team. This is a very good team. So I think no matter if they play the Jazz or they play the Suns, whoever they play, the Nuggets, possibly another team they play in the first round, I think they're going to beat all of those teams as long as LeBron is close to 100%, which I think he's going to be. If Davis is close to 100%, to me, the Lakers are still the team to beat in the West. The only scenario that they could possibly lose to me is if they do get the 7th seed, where it's a 1 or 2 game elimination scenario and AD and LeBron aren't quite there. Because as it gets deep in the series in the first round, they'll deliver. For me, the Lakers are still the favorite in the West because, nothing the Jazz or Suns, quite frankly, have ever done leads me to believe that they can beat the Lakers in a 7-game series.
Yeah, I think the Lakers definitely have it in them to make a run, but it really depends on how well they play together as LeBron James comes back and how well he's feeling physically. I think that probably the best chance to knock off the Lakers might very well be in those short sample size, one game, March Madness style scenarios where, maybe if they catch Steph and then the Warriors, Steph goes off for 50, 60 points, and that's what ends the champ season. That could very well be something that could end up happening. I don't think it's very likely. I think that if LeBron James comes back and he's less than that, 90, 85%, winning 4 games out of 7 is a challenge, no matter how good a team is. And it's going to be a lot more difficult if the Lakers aren't at 100%. They have a good team, a veteran team. But, outside of Anthony Davis and LeBron James, they don't really have a bona fide go-to player to rely on. They have good depth. But in terms of, being able to go up against a team that's got all of its players going for it, to go in shorthand, it's going to be a definite challenge for the Lakers.
Yeah, real quickly, I think it's very interesting to take a look at, the Lakers and the Heat, and we'll get into the East teams a bit. I know we'll talk about the 10 seed in the West, but I mean, you take a look at the Lakers and the Heat were in the NBA Finals last year, and both could potentially be in a play-in game. I am forecasting that neither makes it, but basically best case scenario for both is a 6 seed. I know injuries have played a huge part of that. I know being a COVID season, not having the fans, there's many different things that play a factor into that. Certainly, I don't think either would be a 6 seed if they were all gunning and it was a normal scenario. But the two teams in the NBA Finals, how often do you see them be 6, 7 seeds the following year? Not to mention the Boston Celtics have been a massive disappointment. The Toronto Raptors not even making the playoffs. It's been a really crazy season, which really kind of opens it up to be a very exciting playoff scenario this year with a lot of teams in the mix. So that should be fun.
Yeah, I mean, when you have 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA, you should be one of the favorites to make the NBA Finals. So, yeah, I think they definitely have a chance there. But guys, looking at the 10 seed in the West, will the Spurs hold on to it, or can the Pelicans or the Kings sneak in?
The Spurs are definitely holding on to it. One last point on what you said, Drew. I think at their best, LeBron and Davis are 2 of the top 5 players in the NBA. But right now, given that they're both banged up, you can make a case for neither being in the top 5 right now. So just something to think about. I think obviously at 100%, I echo your statement, but there's so many good players in the NBA. A 90% LeBron and Davis, I'm not convinced that they're necessarily top 5 players. As far as the 10 seed, yeah, the Spurs are going to hang on to that. They're up 2.5 games on the Pelicans, 3 games on the Kings. They've got tiebreakers there. No Zion for the Pelicans. Credit to them for playing hard. Pelicans are the least likely to get it. They play the Mavs, Warriors, and Lakers. Meanwhile, Sacramento has a very easy schedule, and the Spurs do have a very tough schedule. But we saw that they just beat the Bucks last night. If you got a chance to see that game, 146 points for San Antonio. I mean, basically, San Antonio is going to have to lose out, and the Kings are going to have to win out. And given that, Sacramento is under 500, I just don't see both of those things happening. I think San Antonio is pretty safe in that 10 seed, but given that they do have a tough schedule playing the Nets, Knicks, and Suns twice, Sacramento has a small chance playing OKC, Memphis, and then Utah the last game. But I would bet on the Spurs.
Yeah, I think the Spurs have a very real chance of going 0-4 and that not mattering for them holding on to that last play-in spot. The Kings are going in pretty well banged up. De'Aaron Fox has been on the injury report, as is Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes obviously not as great of a player, but still a solid rotational wing guy. Sacramento's going to have and an NBA champion. Yeah. Sacramento definitely has a pretty easy game against the pitiful Oklahoma City Thunder team today. But yeah, it just takes them losing, one of the next couple of games. And I just don't think they're going to have the firepower to be able to overcome and leapfrog the San Antonio Spurs.
Yeah, I think the Spurs definitely end up with that 10 seed, just Not enough games left for the Pelicans and the Kings. Well, moving over to the Eastern Conference, you got the Knicks, the Hawks, the Celtics, the Heat. They could all get the 7 seed. Common, what do you think will slide into that 7 position?
Yeah, it's not going to be the Knicks. When I wrote this rundown a couple days ago, it was probably a little bit closer than it is now, but certainly New York.
3.5, 2.5.
Yeah, but there's like 4 games left to go. So it won't be the Knicks. They've got a 3-game lead there. The Hawks a 2.5-game lead, but you know me, I've been crunching tiebreakers the last couple days, so I can tell you that the Hawks have pretty much all the tiebreakers there. It's really going to go down to Boston and Miami. Right now, Boston is 2 games behind Miami. However, they are tied 1-1 in the series, and they play tonight. So should Boston beat Miami, they would get the tiebreaker over Miami, and the Heat have to play the 76ers, who, as you mentioned, have won 8 straight, also play the Bucks. Then they play the Pistons much easier. But the Celtics have an easier schedule down the stretch. So if they beat Miami tonight and win out, and maybe Miami loses against the Sixers and Bucks, things open up for Boston. But at the end of the day, right now, Miami has the 2-game lead. Right now, you guys probably saw the news, Jaylen Brown out for the season for Boston. I'm not convinced that Boston's going to beat Miami tonight. I think Miami gets the win tonight, and they pretty much lock up the 6th seed there. And Boston is going to have to play in that 7-8 matchup. Real quickly, by the way, since we didn't break it down earlier, some people may not know, the 7 seed plays the 8 seed in a 1-game matchup. The winner of that game will earn the number 7 seed in the playoffs. The 9 seed plays the 10 seed in a 1-game matchup. The loser of that game is out, and the loser of the 7th place versus 8th place game will host the winner of the 9th versus 10th place game in a 1-game matchup to get the 8 seed in the playoffs. And in the West, by the way, I know we talked about it just now, but so many good matchups. We could have Lakers Warriors, LeBron and Curry. We could also have Curry versus Dame Lillard in a shootout, Greg Popovich in the mix. So in the West, it's going to be fun. In the East is also going to be fun. The Wizards, with their hot streak lately, actually, as a 10 seed, are likely to make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's been absolutely crazy. And what a turn of events for the Boston Celtics, who I think are pretty much a shoe and a lock for getting that 7th seed. And, perhaps maybe being out of the playoffs entirely. They still have some good players, but Jaylen Brown, their second best player offensively and defensively. I mean, this is a team that has been kind of heralded for some of the larger overall moves that they've made in terms of, selling off or trading off, rather, their veterans to the Brooklyn Nets to get a treasure trove of draft picks that have helped bring them Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, signing Kemba Walker, making a lot of great moves. And yet they haven't been able to get to the NBA Finals. Perhaps last year was their best chance at doing so. They certainly still have young talent going forward, but it's just been an overall real disappointment, bigger picture for that team. Now that I think they're pretty much set for being, last one or the first team out of that top 6 playoffs in the East.
All I know is I'm rooting hard for the Hornets. They were my preseason pick to make the playoffs. So far they have that 8th seed. So they're teetering, but just got to win some games. Fueled by LaMelo Ball, Common's probably 3rd favorite player in the NBA.
Maybe 3rd least favorite. I'm just kidding. I'm hopping on the LaMelo train, by the way. He's been playing good. I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong.
Hall of Famer?
Not a Hall of Famer, no. Not going that far.
Another week.
Lonzo, though. Better than Lonzo. They actually played the other night, and actually, I will say this, the Hornets look horrendous against the Bulls. I know it's a little too late for the Bulls in that 10 seed. They basically got to win out, and either Indiana or Washington has to lose out. But the Bulls, all of a sudden, Tom, got Zach LaVine back, and they've been playing very well down the stretch. The Hornets, not so much. So they might get in that 8 seed, but I don't know. Drew. Hornets are not playing.
You should have just tanked, man.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, Castleman, tank that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other question. Is it like, how much do you want the 7 or 8 seed? I mean, obviously, teams like the Lakers and Blazers want it, but all due respect to teams like the Hornets and Pacers, those guys aren't making a run in the playoffs.
Well, I mean, as a front office, you probably want to have a little bit better of a draft asset, but how much better are your picks or your odds going to be
Not much.
being towards the back of the ladder. I think there's probably more value in, getting your young guys playoff experience. Certainly if you're the Hornets, you want LaMelo Ball getting playoff experience, even if it is only, a single game playoff. And you also want a little something for the fan bases now that
It's
we're actually
exposure.
able to get teams back or fans back into the stadiums, at least in some limited capacities. That's extra revenue. That's actually more important to management than a draft pick is. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm
Major
always
money.
I don't like tanking. I'm always about like winning and establishing a winning culture. So I'm all for going for the playoff spot. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you get national exposure on TV. Those 7, 8 games and 9, 10 games are going to be on TV. And then if you make the playoffs, you get swept by the Nets or the Bucks, or not the Bucks, but you get swept by the Nets or the 76ers. So that's at least 2 home games that you'll have. So you can make some money off that.
And plus, there's the added bonus. In case you missed the show last week, Drew Brackett himself has claimed that he might watch these play-in games. So you might have Drew Brackett's eyeballs on these games.
Listen up, ad dollars.
Yeah, I mean, Sunday's the last regular season day, and I think there'll be quite a few games. I don't know how many games will be on national TV, but there could be a couple games. So I'm looking forward to tuning into those for sure.
Can't wait.
Yeah, hopefully it's the Lakers and
was it Bart Scott that said can't wait?
Of course it was. Said it to Sal Palantonio.
It's a great interview. I've been watching, speaking of that real quickly, I've been watching lately, I don't know what got me into this, but I've been watching Sports Meltdowns. I watched the Iverson practice, We Are Who We Thought They Were with the Bears, and then I watched I'm 40, Mike Gundy, playoffs, and Jim Mora. So I'm all about that stuff here recently. I can't decide what my favorite is. Honestly, the most passionate is probably the Gundy I'm 40. So some good listens.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think off the top of my head of other ones. There's been some baseball meltdowns where, the manager has
Is it the
done
Pirates
some
manager
crazy
took
things.
the base? Who was that? I can't remember off the top of my head.
mean,
McClendon. I can't remember the first name,
That
but
sounds
yeah,
right.
Leslie
That
McClendon.
sounds right. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah. Well, we'll move on. Let's see what we're moving on to. We're moving on. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
We'll just let Common go here. Looks like Tim Tebow to the Jaguars as a tight end. Really? Is he going to be good? No. Will he get multiple touchdowns? No, he won't. But Common, what do you think?
Well, first off, is it going to be a Pro Bowler, all-pro player? No, of course not. But is it a good move for a one-year deal? Is it worth the risk? Absolutely. He might put some extra butts in the seats. And here's the thing. Don't forget that this guy has adjusted to a new sport in baseball. I know it's the minor leagues, but 223 batting average in 3 minor league seasons, 18 homers. That's not bad. And you look at what he did in the NFL in 2011, 660 rush yards in 14 games, 11 starts, 5.4 yards per carry. This guy has athleticism. I think he's a solid number 2 tight end, possibly a number 1 in the right situation. I see him getting some red zone moments where he catches a touchdown. Maybe he throws for one. Maybe they put him in at fullback. I mean, they're not signing him to a 15-year deal, 10-year contract. I think for 1 year, he's with Urban Meyer, his former college coach. And, it's going to get a few more butts in the seats, a little more excitement around Jacksonville. They've got Trevor Lawrence. They've got Tim Tebow. They've got Urban Meyer. Heck, if I lived in Jacksonville, I want to go to a Jaguars game. I think for what it is, it's a decent investment. I don't know that he's going to be a star, but I don't think he's going to be a laughing stock, and I do think he's going to make the team for the Jaguars.
I would just like to point out, to tie in a fact that Drew revealed to us at the beginning of the show, our last show, Salute Your Sports, was 8 years ago. That was in 2013. Tim Tebow's last NFL gig was in 2012, 1 year before our show ended. Like, how much time has flown by since our last show. That's how much time it's been since he stepped on a gridiron and actually got hit. I mean, we watched The Last Dance as a nation, it felt like just about a year ago in May. And what was the difference for Michael Jordan going from basketball to baseball and then coming back from baseball to basketball, and his trainer, Tim Grover, saying, you're going to have a whole different set of muscles to work out. Now, granted, Tim Tebow does have the benefit of an off season and being in shape, but I can't blame him. Like, he's not the one who gave himself the contract. This is the sort of thing that I was kind of sketchy about with Urban Meyer being hired to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and why, if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I might actually have preferred going to the New York Jets and having them number 1 overall, because at this point, I don't know if I can trust Urban Meyer to make great football moves. Why are you going for a guy that's going to be 34 years old at the start of the season, hasn't played a tight end at high school or collegiate level, has no experience doing this? I mean, there are plenty of tight ends who have actually worked at this somewhat recently, or in football shape, that would give the Jaguars a much better chance at that position, especially when you consider they don't have great players there right now. I mean, all I can do really is trash the move. I don't think it's a good one at all. I mean,
it's more of a front office move, right? They're going to make money because Tebow will sell tickets. We all know that. Sure. We saw that with the Broncos. The radio host will love it there. I should call a radio host in Jacksonville, Nell, and say, OTAs, refer to that as organized Tebow activities. Come on now, get with it. So, he's going to fill up the seats. They'll make a little extra cash, but that's probably about it. He won't win them any additional games or anything like that.
I don't know that he'll win them, but I don't know that he will lose them either. And let me look at it this way. If Tim Tebow does actually end up being good, all of a sudden Urban Meyer and company looks like a great move instead of what is. I mean, it's a low risk move. I mean, it's one thing if they offer him a 10-year deal like the Angels offered to Albert Pujols. We'll talk about that in a little bit. They're offering him a 1-year contract, and I know he's almost 34, but I mean, we see the modern athletics, how guys can play until they're older. And if you look at Tim Tebow, he is physically well built. He is built like a tight end. I mean, you talk about guys playing that position. We've seen like Antonio Gates, Tony Gonzalez, guys like that who are basketball players turn tight end. He's a football player with a tight end body getting converted to tight end. I don't really think it's that much of a transition for him, and he has been a professional athlete recently. It's not like they're getting a bum off the street type deal. So, I mean, I could see where you're coming from, Tom, but I think you just want the move to fail. I would like to see it succeed. I think that would be exciting.
This is one of the few areas, for whatever reason, I have a little bit of haterade in me. I don't understand what it is about him that kind of like drives him up. Well, I think I do a little bit, but we won't get into it. I just think that if you need a tight end on your depth chart, there are literally like dozens of options of players who are much better, that are like fresh out of college from a year or two ago, that actually have played the position, that they know. Like, we know that tight end is arguably the most complicated position to learn in football outside of quarterback, because you have dual responsibilities in terms of being an inline blocker on the line or splitting out for a route. I don't know how, like, it's a lot to grasp. And I think that it's not just the physical, it's the mental side. Not to say that he's incapable of learning it. Right. But we typically see rookie tight ends not perform as well as they do. It takes them a year or two to get used to playing in the NFL. He's going from no college, no tight end ever to the NFL. It's such a massive jump. Like, he's in great physical shape, but he's not in football shape. He's in baseball shape. Like, that's what blows my mind about the move is you could sign lots of guys to play tight end that are in much better shape or much better qualified for the position. I think Drew's absolutely right. This is all about money and seats and eyeballs on a product that probably isn't going to be all that great this year.
On a final note, I don't want to talk about this too long, so Castleman gets too into it. But I do think this, though, Tom. I think he's a quarterback. He is a guy, a quarterback learns better than just about anyone else. So I do think we have to take note that he is a quarterback. And like I mentioned, I actually think that he's going to be more employed in sort of two tight end systems where they ask him to catch a pass. I don't know that they're gonna employ him as the primary blocker. But we'll see what happens. Certainly, a move that grabbed headlines.
Did what it
Yes,
was intended to do.
yes, it did. Well, speaking of other headlines, Albert Pujols released during his last year of his contract by the Angels. Common, was this a good move?
It's hard to say. I go back and forth. And this is kind of like the Tim Tebow move. It's like there's not per se a definite answer, but I lean that it was a bad move just because, if you actually look at his statistics this year, I'll give you the math. I was crunching numbers when I did this. So this year in 86 at bats and 24 games, you multiply that by 6.5 to about 559 at bats and 156 games. You get his 5 homers and 12 RBI become 32 and a half homers and 78 RBI. You look at the same deal last season, 39 games, 152 at bats. Multiply it by 4, get you about 156 games, 608 at bats. That's 24 homers and 100 RBIs. I mean, he's essentially in that 25, 27 homer range, 90 RBI range the last 2 seasons. I know his batting average is woeful, but this guy continues to hit for power. And I think he's a bat that you would like to have. And now, am I going to offer him a 3-year contract? Probably not. But he had 1 year left on his deal. I think he's a guy that the Angels can use. Whether they start him every day or not, probably not. I do think there are definitely some teams that, to me, Albert Pujols is still an above average starting first baseman or DH, simply because of the power that he gives you. I mean, he's still a good power hitter. His average has gone down, but his power is still pretty good. I mean, he's a guy that essentially per 600 at bats is looking at about 30 homers a year. Even the last 2 years were considered down years.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is an end of an era, which we were looking at anyway, as he announced that he was going to be retiring at the end of the season anyway. But I think it's the right call. We can talk about the numbers, and I'll get into some later, but quite frankly, Joe Maddon just didn't have much interest in playing Albert. He would rather give time to other players in the lineup, even with, I believe it's Anthony Rendon, who was out for a bit with an injury. If you're not going to play a guy who doesn't have any defensive value for you playing out in the field, what is he doing on your roster? To go over the numbers a little bit, going a little bit more advanced metrics on this one, I'm going to use a stat that's called weighted runs created plus. So basically, this is just indicating how many runs a player creates with their batting on the base pads. For reference, 100 is considered average. This is weighted by ballpark and by league, so that you don't have weighted numbers versus National League where you have more pitchers hitting. His WRC plus is 73. That means he is 27% worse than a league average player. Certainly might be worth a flyer to somebody, but not a whole lot of value created there. If you look at his weighted on base average, it's 0.269. For reference on that, league average is 0.32. So he's about 51 points below average. Anyway you cut it, he's a below average offensive player, and for a player who can't play defense, what really does that leave anybody for putting you in a lineup?
Well, and I don't know that specific stat, how it's exactly calculated. I do know the numbers I crunched that still get him about 30 home runs. I noticed his RBI total was down, so I wonder if a lot of those home runs have been solo homers, which part of that is, are guys on that Angels lineup getting on base. So I don't know exactly where you're pulling your stats. I think part of the fact is that he hasn't had as many at bats, so maybe the home runs have timed out differently for him. But there's different things. You could pull out stats that show he's below average. I pulled up stats that per 600 at bats, he's still close to 30 homers, which is well above average. So again, you could go either way. We'll ask what team he should go to, and I'll give you a team that could use him much more so than most teams.
Well, first of all, he should just go to the Cardinals and end his career there. But this move was awful. It was a terrible move. I don't even care about the stats, just the way it happened. I read an article about it, and basically Joe Maddon just kind of kind of said, "You're done, man." And no players knew about it. Like all of a sudden, he was just hugging guys. And Mike Trout, one of the best players in baseball, is like, "What's going on?" And we're like, "Oh, they just released Albert." So just a classless move. There's a way to go about it when he's one of the greatest players in this era, and there's a way to go about it, and the organization did not go about it the correct way. That's the problem I have with it.
And I completely agree with that. And I think, as I mentioned, I mean, this is the last year on his deal. The Angels have the potential to have Albert Pujols retire as an Angel in a classy way and do a special send off. I mean, the Angels are not really a World Series contender. Quite frankly, they're not even a playoff contender. I know you want to win every game, but Madden wasn't even playing them every day. So the fact that, like if you're using him as a guy who, gets spot starts and comes off your bench, there's no metric that will show you that. I mean, he's definitely an above average bench player for sure. So for me, I agree with Drew as far as teams that he could go to. I know the Cardinals are the storyline. I know that's possible, but I don't think that's a very good fit just because Paul Goldschmidt plays in front of him in first base. There's not a designated hitter there. He's almost never going to play in St. Louis. I know Tony La Russa and the White Sox have gotten mentioned, but same thing, not a good fit. Jose Abreu, the MVP at first base. Yermin Mercedes is literally an MVP candidate this year at DH, so you're not going to pull him out at DH. So neither of those fits are very good. A team that I think he should go to and could give him a good send-off and make him an everyday player is the Cleveland Indians. This year, the platoon they've had at first base this season, Indians first baseman, at last check here, this was a few days back, I tallied it again, someone hit a home run, so I may be off potentially by one home run. But basically, one home run this season the Cleveland Indians have gotten from their first baseman. One home run. And Albert Pujols is the guy that averages nearly 30. So I'm not saying he's going to be a guy that you want if you have a great first baseman, but the Cleveland Indians are the worst in that position in the entire major league. So, Tom, you could say in some metrics he's below average, but there's no metric that he's performing any worse than the Cleveland Indian first basemen are. So if I'm the Cleveland Indians, I go Albert Pujols. I sign him for the rest of this year. He will actually improve your position, maybe get you some more fans at the games as fans are opening up across sports. And I think that would be a great fit, Albert Pujols going to the Cleveland Indians or whatever they're calling them now. I can't remember.
They're changing that next year. So they're still the Cleveland Indians for this season.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a solid team. I think maybe outside of them, I don't know if there's anybody that really would want to go out and sign Albert Pujols unless they're looking for a little bit of marketing or unless they're looking to make sure that they have their team initials scrawled on a Hall of Fame plaque in about 10 years when Albert is up for induction. I mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer through and through. He might even be a unanimous Hall of Famer. So maybe somebody wants to catch on to that.
Not the way the MLB voters vote.
Well, we'll see how they end up going. Well, because he might have had accusations. I don't remember how legitimate they were about HGH, but I think he had something. So maybe it could fall well short of near unanimous. But
I think Rivera is the only guy that was unanimous. Mariano Rivera.
I don't even think he was.
He wasn't?
No, Rivera was unanimous. Yeah.
Oh, I thought there was one guy who didn't vote for him.
I think there was one guy who didn't vote for Griffey. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, it was Griffey. I think Jeter was also unanimous, which is
well. The point is.
But anyway, yeah, I think like if somebody's looking to pick up Albert Pujols to maybe give him a little bit of pop, put their team initials, like I said, on the Hall of Fame plaque, then go for it. He's not going to cost you much more than the minimum, but it's also kind of how much more does he really want to play, given that this is going to be his last year anyway. Does he want to go out and try to give it a go for another team, or does he say, you know what, I'm going to hang it up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, where do you guys think he ranks in terms of? Obviously, first ballot Hall of Famer, completely agree. The way I phrased this question in my head, I'm looking at top 5, top 10, field player, hitter type situation, not including pitchers, because it's very hard when you compare pitchers and hitters.
Sure.
I mean, is he in the top 5? Is he in the top 10? Where does he rank in terms of the all-time great baseball players?
Now, where do you have him?
top 10, top 15 fringe, if you go back all the way. He certainly has the numbers. He has over 3,000 hits. He was close to five? I don't know what his home runs. At least 500.
He's close to 700.
Yeah.
Drew.
Okay. There we go. Close to 700. So definitely a fringe top 10 player. Top 15.
I would say don't even call it fringe. He's easily top 10 because you look at his numbers right now. He's third all time in RBI, fifth all time in home runs, fifth all time in doubles, and he's just outside the top 10 in hits. If he does come back, he'll be in the top 10 likely. So, I mean, for me, I look at guys that I definitely put above him. I think you look at Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Ken Griffey Jr., Willie Mays, and Ted Williams are the five I've put ahead of him for sure. Probably Barry Bonds. I know there's steroid questions, but Barry Bonds, I think, has to be ahead of him. And that would put Albert Pujols at about number 7. That's where I've got him. I know there's a few other guys that would be in that mix, but I'd say he's fringe top 5, definitely top 10. I mean, again, he's third all-time in RBI and fifth all-time in home runs. I mean, he's won the MVP. He's done it in 2 leagues for 2 teams. He's won a World Series. I mean, there's really nothing that this guy hasn't done. He's hit for power. He's hit for average. And he actually, back in the day was a pretty solid first baseman also. So for me, Albert definitely is in the top 10, not even close to being fringe.
So for me, when I read the question, I thought this was including just like baseball players all time, including pitchers, at which point I had him probably in like the top 25. I think probably fringe top 10 is where I would put him. I mean, baseball more so than any other sport allows you to compare across eras and kind of looking at players who were great in their own time. Pujols certainly probably one of the best players in this era, but I definitely don't want to, kind of like throw any sort of shade or anything at guys that have been doing it, back in much earlier times in baseball history.
Mickey
I mean, obviously there's Mickey Mantle, there's Babe Ruth, there's Ted Williams, for example.
But those Babe Ruth and Ted Williams are ahead of him for sure. Those are guys I have ahead of him.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But there's a lot of great players. I mean, even if you want to go St. Louis, Stan Musial, a fantastic player playing in a different era of baseball. So
sure.
I think that he's probably like I'd say fringe top 10 easily in the top 15 if we're going just position players. If we have pitchers as well, I'd say top 25 is where I'd have Albert Pujols all time.
Yeah, if we count pitchers, for sure top 20 for me. Without pitchers, for sure top 10. I mean, obviously the pitcher, you can argue, probably in baseball has, well, it's hard to say because they're only on the mound 1 out of every 5 days, but in a given game, obviously the pitcher probably has more impact
than the single
hitter.
player. Yeah,
hard to say, but I mean, I think Albert certainly is a legend, and I think he deserves to go out the right way, as Drew said. There is something to be said about just how the Angels handled this, and there's something to be said about just what it means to send the legend off the right way. And I hope he gets that chance. I do hope a team signs him if he wants to play. I think it would be cool to see. I know I remember a few years back, a cool story about Albert Pujols is he got 100% on his U.S. citizenship test. So he definitely knew those questions pretty well.
Absolutely. Is Pujols not, again, he's old enough where, guys were lying about their age back in the day. I think he's probably one of them, correct?
That's what I've heard.
Somebody said he was 34, and I was like, see, though.
I'm not out here to accuse anyone. What is that pitcher in Little League, Danny Amonte? Is that the right one? That was the one who was like years older and was the Little League legend. And I think he was in like the Yankees minor league system or something, but never made a big name for himself. Do you guys remember that guy, Danny Amonte? Like the Little League pitcher. I might be saying the wrong name, but it's the person I'm thinking of. It was like
there's many players who've done this.
Little League World Series sensation. And I think they're like 12, 13-year-olds. And he was like 15 or 16, and he was striking out all the kids. Something like that. Don't quote me on the exact age.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to poo-poo Albert. I'm just saying that's something that comes to mind.
Okay. Well, I'm not Albert Pujols. If you are listening or watching
I'm
this
sure he is.
online, Albert Pujols, I will not accuse you of anything. I might accuse ESPN of some wrong decisions later in the show, but I will not be accusing Albert Pujols.
Interesting. Well, I guess I'll look forward to hearing your ESPN rant.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Is it time for my favorite
Locks of the week?
Locks of the week. All
Let's
right.
hear the recap. Let me, get my coffee and take a quick nap while you do this. No, this is actually exciting. We'll do it.
So another big week for the show. Another big week for Tom Castleman, last place, but moving on up. Another 3-0 week for Mr. Castleman. Ben Simmons over 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists, finished with 26. He had Lakers +5 versus the Nuggets. He said a little birdie told him the Lakers would win. Well, they did, 93-89 in a big win for the Lakers. Padres -1.5 over the Pirates. Well, the Padres won 2-0, so Castleman just barely getting that one. Meanwhile, I was also 2-1. I had the 76ers -7.5 at the Bulls. Sixers winning by 12 in that game. Knicks +4 at the Grizzlies. Correct again, the Knicks winning by 14. I had Barcelona to beat Atletico Madrid. That ended in a 0-0 tie. As did Barcelona soccer game today, a 3-3 tie, much more exciting tie. But nonetheless, Barcelona will not win La Liga this year. So it's been a very disappointing week watching my favorite soccer team. A lot of heartbreak for sure. Barca had their chances to win that game, did not. And Drew Brackett went for his soccer unders. I had to search through the world soccer competitions, and I found them. Championship League, English Second Division League, Luton Town versus Rotherham United. Under 2.5 goals in that game. There was 0-0. Ain't nobody scoring, as Drew Brackett says. Then we had another game, Serie B, Cittadella versus Virtus Entella, or Cittadella, however you say it. Under 2.5 goals. Drew was right again. 1-0 in that game. It was an own goal. So in those two games, only one goal. However, when he went to a first division league in the Copa Libertadores in South America, that's where he lost his streak. He had Atletico MG and Cerro Porteño under 2.5 goals. That ended 4-0. So that one did not go quite as well. But nonetheless, I think Drew Brackett is now percentage points ahead of me, although I think I have more wins. It's very close. Tom Castleman creeping in. So we've got a fun race to see who our Locks of the Week champion is. I certainly plan on passing up Drew this week for sure. And we'll start with Mr. Brackett. Do you have some soccer unders for us this week, or what are we thinking?
Yeah, I like to, have a dramatic finish to the week. So all these games are over the weekend coming up. We'll start with Saturday. We'll go to the Turkish League.
Is it Fenerbahce? Fenerbahce with Mesut Ozil?
Sivasspor versus Kasimpasa.
Okay.
Under 2.5 goals in that contest.
Okay.
We'll go to the Sunday morning J2 League. This is the Japanese second league, I believe, the J2 League. Toyota Sanga versus Mito Halihak. Under 2.5 goals in that contest. And then Sunday, the Portugal Segunda Liga. FC Porto B versus Firenze. Under 2.5 goals.
I'm sweating from laughing over here. My goodness. Porto, by the way.
We need to get a globe for you, Mr. Drew Brackett, so that when we get your picks of the week, it can be where in the world is Drew Brackett putting his locks of the week?
And you know what? I could make the locks live on the show by throwing darts at the globe. That can pick the league or the country.
Just spin it,
and then we'll spin the wheel on the league. Yes.
This sounds like an actually wonderful idea. I definitely think it would be entertaining. I don't know
Yeah,
if Drew
Common
has
just
a
taught, the EP can help with this and figure it out, right, Common?
Yeah, my girlfriend is the executive producer on the show. So, by the way, big week for her. Let's give her a shout out. Her birthday is on Thursday, May 13th. It's Tuesday, May 11th now, which, by the way, for that reason only, we are not recording the show on Thursday because we would have recorded Thursday to get the NFL schedule announcement, and Wednesday, we might get into that next week. Big NFL schedule release this week. Just to mention that real quickly. We already know, though, who's going to play who, so it's not as big. I know Chiefs-Packers is the big Week 17 draw game, but we'll find out who plays on Monday night, Sunday night football, etc. But definitely, Allie let me use her light for the show. I've got new lighting over here. We got this mic because of her, and just a true executive producer extraordinaire of sorts. And I can tell you that she would definitely approve this idea, Mr. Brackett.
Well, when you guys have your production meeting with just you guys and not Tom and myself, I think your mom's also included, you can talk about the show and then just tell me what to do as usual come showtime.
Sounds like a plan, Stan. Mr. Castleman, what do you have for locks of the week?
All right, let's go with some games tonight. I will go with Dylan Cease and the Chicago White Sox hosting the Minnesota Twins. You can get them at minus 115 on the money line. If you're feeling frisky and want some plus money, go ahead, take that plus 170 on a 1.5 run spread for the Sox to cover. But for our purposes, I'm just going to go with the White Sox to win tonight. I'm going to go with the Brooklyn Nets covering 4.5 on the Chicago Bulls. The Nets desperately need to stay ahead of the Milwaukee Bucks, and the Bucks are playing, I believe, is it Houston? They're playing somebody where they are heavily, heavily favored.
They just played Houston recently, so I don't know. But anyway,
Brooklyn
go ahead.
wants to stay ahead of the Bucks because they have played 3 times this season. Milwaukee's won 2 out of 3, both of those in Milwaukee. So Brooklyn's going to be looking ahead, making sure they have that series with home court advantage going into the playoffs. And let's see, I think I might go back to baseball. I'll probably regret not picking one of these other ones. Give me the Marlins on the money line, minus 105. They are going up against the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Wonderful. Well, I don't know about these games. They probably started or almost started. So I went for the night game so I don't get accused of games starting. Although I think you're probably within the bounds, Castleman. Those might be 6:30 tips.
These are 7 o'clock and later.
7 o'clock and later. We're currently at 6:27 on Tuesday, May 11th is our recording. So you are within the bounds.
Cayman time, of course. Not official time over here on the East Coast.
Correct. This is Common Enchev Chicago Standard Time. So I'm going to go with starting off with the NBA with my locks of the week. I like the Suns minus 4.5 at the Warriors. One of these games was without Steph Curry, but Curry played in the other one. In the 2 matchups this season, the Suns have absolutely dominated, winning by 22 and 21 over the Warriors. The Warriors, by the way, coming off a back-to-back, a tight, close game against the Jazz last night. The Suns are more rested. They're coming off a loss. They'll be motivated. We talked about it earlier in the show. They want to get the 1 seed. They still are in the fight for the 1 seed, only 1.5 games back, and have the tiebreaker. So I think the Suns don't want to play the Lakers potentially in the first round. They want to win tonight. They're going to win by 5 or more against a Golden State team that likely to be tired. And the Golden State team that, quite frankly, they've matched up with really well in the 2 earlier meetings, winning by 20 plus. I like the Lakers minus 3 over the Knicks. This line was about 5.5 last night, so it slipped down to 3 points. The reasoning for that, I believe, we can confirm if there's an official update, but people saying out there that LeBron James will not play in this game. But I still think the Lakers win. I think they won 123-110 over the Suns last time out. Anthony Davis, 42 points. He's back. Lakers want to avoid that 7 seed. It's a must win for them. And I think they've played so well against Phoenix that is going to give them some momentum. It is going to give them some confidence. And quite frankly, I mean, I like Julius Randle. I like the Knicks defense, but I think Anthony Davis is better than Julius Randle. And I think the Lakers roster is better than the Knicks roster, even without LeBron James. So only 3 points. I like the Lakers by 4 or more. And then finally, I've got a sort of historic bet today. For the first time in this season, this 2021, I'm going to bet baseball. You guys know that I think the first month of the season, baseball is all luck, hitters getting used to it. And quite frankly, this month is pretty lucky too. I think about June, we'll get a more realistic view of how teams are. But nonetheless, I think there's a little bit less luck involved in May than April. So I'm going to go for the Dodgers tonight, -1.5 over the Mariners. I know the Dodgers are coming off a dreadful road trip. I know their 11-game road trip was bad, but I like the pitching matchup here. Walker Buehler, 1-0 on the season, 3.13 ERA. The Mariners starter, Yusei Kikuchi, is 1-2 with a 4.30 ERA. I like the Dodgers matchup here. The Dodgers coming off an off day yesterday. They're back home. They're going to regroup. I think those hitters get going. I think Walker Buehler delivers a gem on the mound, and the LA Dodgers get back on track, winning by 2 or more tonight.
Common, how do you feel knowing that I had 2 of your picks on my card as I prepped for this show? Does that make you feel better or worse about things?
So did you agree with my picks?
I agreed with Suns, and I agreed with Buehler and the Dodgers -1.5. I kind of sort of leaned on the Knicks and Lakers. I didn't put that one down. I looked at it, but the other 2 I did write down.
Man, if you asked me this question 3 months ago, I would have told you that I felt absolutely horrible. But the fact that you're on a roll and you're hot, I feel really good about it. It gives me encouragement. So compared to back when you used to fade your picks because they were always wrong, well, these days I tend to trust your picks. I mean, things have changed. You know, the last 3 or 4 weeks, Castleman all of a sudden is predicting things right. So the fact that you had those 2 picks on your card, man, makes me feel great about it.
We're about to have a couple for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I like that.
Our show combined for, what was it? Let me do math. 9, 7, and 2 last week. So, and I think we were maybe
back-to-back weeks that we did that, right? Or maybe it was 8 and 1 2 weeks ago.
I think
we're doing okay.
Something like that. 7 and 2 back-to-back weeks. 8 and 1, maybe one of them. So the tide is turning. The tide is turning on this show, and it's turning more so for Castleman than anyone, who is coincidentally still in last place. So I feel good.
I mean, I'm always at least 2 and 1.
Well, when you pick soccer, you're at least 2 and 1. You have when you pick other things, you're about 0 and 3, 1 and 2. But when you pick soccer, you can rely on at least 2 and 1. So I'm thinking maybe 2 and 1 for Drew Brackett, maybe 2 and 1 for Castleman, 3 and 0 for me. That sounds like a good week for me.
That's always how the breakdown goes.
Absolutely.
That's how we hope it goes. At least one of us on the show does.
Yes.
Moving on, I'll save mine for last.
Boy.
Drew Brackett I've got like a salute statement mix. But let's start with Castleman for his statement of the week, or salute, or whatever he wants to say.
Yeah, so I've got a couple things, keeping it relatively short. First off, a salute to the WNBA. May 14th, they tip off on their 25th season as a league, so a salute to them on that.
Salute to the Chicago Sky getting Candace Parker, I believe, in the offseason. She's.
Do you have any leans in that game, in that league?
Any what?
Leans?
What? Oh, leans as to who we think is going to win the championship? Oh, gosh.
Whoever hits Diana Taurasi.
The Phoenix Mercury, she's teammates with Sophie Cunningham, the Mizzou legend. So, I mean,
I'd have to look at the rosters and make the determination. Who won last year? Do we know?
Oh, gosh.
Was it the Lynx?
It might have been the Lynx.
Minnesota. Right.
We'll have to confer with the
research. Technology.
Yeah, I remember the first WNBA season when it was like Lisa Leslie and Cheryl Swoops, Cynthia Cooper, I think who was the girl on the Liberty who hit that one half-court three?
It was the Seattle Storm. And
Seattle Storm.
Brianna Stewart was the finals MVP.
Oh, that's right.
UConn star.
Yeah, UConn star. Absolutely. Well, anyways, yeah, absolutely. A salute to the WNBA. I might be tuning in come the summer.
Absolutely, yeah. And for my statement of the week, originally, before we had him in, I was going to talk a little bit of Tebow, but had something else in the can. This is a little bit of old news, but the NFL is expanding the numbers that players are allowed to wear at various positions.
Tom Brady not too happy about it.
He is not too happy about it, and I'm not too happy about it from one specific standpoint. It's ridiculous to make the players with this rule change have to pay to buy out basically all of their merchandise that is currently on the market if they want to change numbers. Dalvin Cook is one of the players who wanted to go from his current number 33 to his college number, which I believe was 4, until he found out that it was going to be millions of dollars for him to buy up all of the Dalvin Cook jerseys that have the number 33 on them. Teams don't have to pay to get rid of jerseys on players that they trade or cut. I mean, what does this say to fans who went out and just maybe bought, say, a Dalvin Cook jersey, and then all of a sudden he has old merchandise? Do teams have to pay when they decide to change their uniform style or overall look? No, it's ridiculous to put the onus on the players. I think that especially if we're going to be expanding the rules, they should absolutely be able to pick whatever number they want. And if anybody picks up the tab, it shouldn't be them who are at the proverbial bottom of the revenue food chain when it comes to how the money trickles down from league to ownership to player level.
For the record, I know Castleman is the money expert on the show. I know I call him Contract Castleman. At first, I was going to wildly disagree with you because I'm like, who cares? Let whoever wants to wear whatever number they want. And in theory, that part of it is fine with me. But I personally, I obviously missed the story. I didn't realize that they're making the players pay extra money to change their jersey number. That in itself is ridiculous. So I would like to see them allow for number changes, but also allow for the players to do it without having to pay that money.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is always, well, maybe not always, but in recent history, at least, this has been a thing where if a player joins a team and says, oh, hey, I really want, number 23, that's my lucky number, that if the player who has that number decides to give it up, they have to buy out their merchandise that the team in the league might be selling in order to do that. So that's where it's been a thing for a while. And I just don't think that that's really a just thing to do, especially when you're opening up so many new revenue merchandise avenues.
Agreed. Drew, what do you got?
2 salutes. First one is former Hawaii quarterback Colt Brennan passed away this morning. He played at Hawaii for.
I remember him. He has all sorts of passing records.
Yeah, so he was 6th in the Heisman voting in 2006 and finished 3rd in 2007. He's 4th all time in career touchdown passes. He had the single season record for touchdown passes with 58 until Joe Burrow broke it in 2019. And the guy could just throw the ball. He passed for over 4,000 yards 3 times in his career. So, that put Hawaii on the map, especially when we were in high school. You watch those games. I think I might have stayed up late then and watched those games because it was always fun.
You're an old man now.
No, can't do that.
It was his birthday last week. 30-year-old bracket, joining me as a 30-year-old. Tom Castleman's pretty young. Are you 28 or 29, Tom? You've
29.
got some time.
I've got 30 coming up in a few months.
Okay, we'll get there.
Staring me down.
Yeah.
Yes. So rest in peace, Colt Brennan. And then the other salute, Russell Westbrook sets the new record for career triple doubles. He broke Oscar Robertson's record that had stood since 1974. How about that, Russell Westbrook?
And he did
got his 182nd triple double.
Shooting about 40%, getting about 5 turnovers.
But it doesn't even matter. You have a guy who plays so hard on your team. He's one of the hardest working players in the NBA. Sure, he's not the best shooter, but the guy's going to get rebounds. You see LeBron shoot, and he's backpedaling. Russell Westbrook shooting, and he's going to get his own board.
You know what my favorite part of the triple-double thing is? I was watching something online where Bertens, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, one of his teammates, a power forward, was about to go for an uncontested open rebound. And he saw Russell Westbrook there, and he pulled out and let Westbrook get the rebound.
Absolutely.
And the announcers were like, if he got that rebound, he might have gotten cut. So certainly I think what Russell Westbrook is doing is impressive, but it is without question the most overrated achievement in the history of sports.
Impressive. He broke a record that nobody thought anybody would ever break.
But yeah, you can
that's crazy.
Assists, or you can get 12 assists and get 5 turnovers and have like just over 2-to-1 turnover ratio. Then you can be Chris Paul, get 9-10 assists and get 2 turnovers and have over 4-to-1 assist-to turnover ratio. So I mean, you look at Chris Paul, a lot of seasons, his assist to turnover ratio is twice better. I think there are so many players who can do what Westbrook does if they simply had the usage that he had. And you know, he set this record, and he keeps breaking this record year after year. There's a statistic, if you've ever heard of it, most uncontested rebounds in the NBA. Those are considered rebounds that no one is going for, and any player could get. Doesn't really help the team, doesn't really matter. Well, he gets those rebounds where he lines up on a free throw or after a miss. It's him and the big guy next to him, and he ends up getting it. I mean, you look at Enes Kanter and Steven Adams. Take a look at their rebound totals when they played with Westbrook versus when they didn't play with him. Those rebound totals went higher because those players were letting Westbrook get at the stat pad. It is an impressive accomplishment, but you have to put it into context. And when you're a below average field goal percentage,
21 assists in his last game,
consistently leading the NBA in turnovers, this stat is not nearly as impressive as people will make it out to be. I'm not saying it's not impressive, but I'm not really that impressed by it personally compared to other records that exist out there. Now, if you were getting these
28 points, 13 rebounds, 21 assists to break the record. Come on.
How many turnovers?
Don't care.
What was his field goal percentage?
I have no idea. Don't care.
On this season, he's shooting 44% from the field.
One of his better seasons, still below average when it comes to the NBA. And you look at his free throw and three-point percentage, those will be even worse, Tom. What's his free throw?
But he's not a three-point shooter. He's not a three-point shooter. That's not his game.
Well, he takes a lot that he misses that he shouldn't take.
Well, he's 65% from the line, 31.5% from beyond the arc. I mean, I think it's still impressive. Like,
I'm not saying he's a shooter by any means.
Yeah,
this is a heck of an athlete.
Like you look
he is not one of the 20 greatest players of all time.
No, but he's definitely top 50. He's incredible. Like if you look at like all the different players that have come through the league, you know, Magic Johnson with his size and his athleticism, players like Jason Kidd, like the fact that we've had great players at the point guard position that nobody has done what he has done. It's just incredible.
I agree, but I still look at guys like Magic Johnson and Jason Kidd. These guys weren't getting, 5 turnovers a game, 6 turnovers a game, which Westbrook consistently gets. These guys were running the team and getting the most they can out of their team. It's easy to get better stats when you get usage rate. It's the same concept of, well, this guy had 1,200 rush yards. Well, yeah, he had 3.4 yards a carry. If you gave him the ball constantly, he's going to get rush yards. It's just, you got to put it in the context. I'm not saying that what he's not doing is impressive, but I'm not wowed by Russell Westbrook. I think he's highly overrated, and I think the NBA has seen it now because they're I know you could say they're accustomed to it, but they're kind of tired of it because this season actually, if you look at his percentages, is better than his MVP season, and no one is putting him even close to MVP. In fact, I saw a list of top 5 point guards in the NBA. It didn't include him, and I look at the list. It was like Stephen Curry, Luka Doncic, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, and I'm trying to think who the other one was. But I looked at that list and I was like, oh, those guys are all better than Westbrook,
I don't know. Still an all-time great in my book.
Yep, me too.
Well, anyways, I know you guys put that out there for me because I'm not a Westbrook.
Well, it's also historic. It's also for the sake of the accomplishment.
It's fair. Speaking of down goes
there was an earthquake.
There's an earthquake. There goes my microphone. That
You're
anyway.
up for your salute and statement, or statement
Yes.
and salute or statement or whatever.
Correct. Sorry for that little earthquake. But we are up for statement of the week, and I'm doing a salute that turns into statement. First off, salute to Kenny Mayne from ESPN, one of the all-time great ESPN anchors being let go by the company. His humor and sarcasm is unmatched by anyone in the sports broadcast industry. One of the top 5 all-time talents ESPN has ever had. I don't know if you guys watched the show called Main Street, where he did a series of basically satiric comedic pieces where he went all over the sports world. You can find that on YouTube. It's a must watch. I know he tweeted out the first thing when he sent his resume tape to ESPN. He basically had a thing where you check mark, you'll hire me, you won't hire me, or whatever type thing. It was just very unconventional. For me, I'm really sad to hear that Kenny Mayne is going. I think, honestly, when I think of ESPN, besides maybe Scott Van Pelt, who is their number one guy, to me, Kenny Mayne is probably my second favorite current sports anchor that ESPN has. And this is just a trend. I know part of it is that, they have to have layoffs. They have to make money. And I get it. Sometimes they let go the more seasoned, more expensive people. But I think ESPN is losing too many of its top talents. And Kenny Mayne is someone you cannot let go. Cut someone else. Don't cut Kenny Mayne. I know they cut Trent Dilfer a couple years ago. He was great on the NFL coverage. I know they've lost Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen, guys over the years who are very talented people. Keith Olbermann, although I'm not as big of a fan as some are of him, I think he's since come back in a sort of role. But they've just consistently lost a lot of their top talent to other networks. And I don't like it. I don't like it. I think ESPN needs to hold on to some of the old school people so they can hold on to some of the old school fans that they had. And Kenny Mayne is unlike most of the other guys. He's very satirical, and he's kind of got that old school humor that people like me and Tom Castleman probably enjoy.
Yeah, you can't really say that I have a special connection to watching Kenny Mayne simply because I didn't really grow up watching ESPN. It was a cable-free childhood and household for me. That I'm not like throwing any shade or anything. I just don't have any sort of connection to Kenny Mayne.
That's
but
fair.
Certainly the outpouring that I'm seeing on social media from current and former employees and anchors at ESPN, on-air talents at ESPN, definitely very indicative of the impact that he's had on a lot of people's lives.
I'm just glad Common didn't call me old there, because he went old school and mentioned himself and you. So I slipped underneath
You're
that
still
one.
in the hip young crowd, Drew.
Yeah.
Drew's the hip young guy on the show, and Castleman and I are the geezers. I mean, I think I'm hip in some way. I've got a weird sense of humor. I actually think of myself as someone who's very, very diverse. I think I can blend in both old school and new school, but there is something about old school cheesy humor that gets me. John Anderson, a Mizzou alum, another guy that does a good job of that on ESPN for me. But Kenny Mayne is the master. Have you guys seen that series, Main Street? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? YouTube it, and anyone listening or watching YouTube it. It's like a short, like 5 to 7 minute episodes. There's multiple seasons of it, and it's just something that I used to watch like back in the day. This is something that started about 10, 11, 12 years ago, and I think they stopped it at one point and did other type of satirical things for them. But that I used to love back as like a high school kid, and right when I was entering college, when I was looking at the sports broadcasting industry, that's something that really gave me a lot of laughs. Anyways, I think that just about does it for Salute Your Sports.
You can have the last word.
I'll have the last word, unlike the last show ever, which Castleman got the last word.
That was one of the most incredible things that's ever happened.
It was pretty incredible. And I will say, Drew Brackett, you win MVP of the show today just for bringing up the anniversary, because me being a historian, I was not aware of this epic anniversary. But Drew Brackett wins the week. We'll see who wins it next week. Have a good day, everyone.